Bore da pawb, diolch am dod i'r cyfarfod. Good morning everyone and welcome to the meeting. Apologies for absence, Mia.
You've got Commissioner Kirsty Williams, Chief Fire Officer Pin Monaghan, Area Manager Chris Hadfield, Bunker, Dominic Meeker, Assistant Chief Fire Officer Martin Ward-White, and Kate Hunt from Audit.
Okay, thank you. Noted. Declarations of interest. Nothing further than is already in the register. Nothing else? Okay, so I've just got a couple of announcements. So Croeso, welcome to Liam Powell, our Director of Finance. This is his first meeting with us. And to Area Manager Mark Haddle, Head of Risk Reduction, who recently joined the service. A very warm welcome to you both, and look forward to working with you, certainly in the short term, if not the medium term, while we're here. Another big announcement is that we're celebrating our 30-year anniversary at South Wales Fire and Rescue Headquarters on Saturday, the 28th of March. So that's a week tomorrow. So, Pawb yn croeso, everyone welcome. I'm sure it'll be a very interesting day. We look forward to be here and meeting with members of the service and their families. Okay, point 4, to receive the minutes of the Finance and Audit Committee of the 12th of December. I'm not taking it page by page. I'm assuming everyone's read it. And I would ask, are there any typos? I haven't found any. No. So well done. And are there any accuracies or typos that people want to raise? No? In that case, those minutes are approved. And let's pick up on updates on outstanding actions. So, the first one on page 13, the draft digital strategy, the update.
Chair, I can confirm that's in the agenda for Board of Commissioners meeting. Papers published today, meeting next Friday.
Okay, then that's sorted. And the next one, update, internal audit update reports.
This was about, Chair, internal governance. So we have now redesigned our internal governance arrangements, and the only action left at the end is to publicise that sufficiently across the service. So okay. I'm working with corporate comms on that at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Will we need a further update, or will that
I think that could be closed.
That's closed now, yeah. Okay, close that one. And internal update reports, anti-fraud audit.
Again, Chair, from me, I got legal advice on the relevant policies that we felt were affected by the new legislation. That advice from that. I updated the internal auditors of what we've done, so students should be aware. And I've now gratefully handed the baton over to Liam to have a look at making the amendments which have been advised. And I think there's a training package which needs to be developed on tandem with that. Okay, I'm only being pedantic here. It is something I picked up. So the update 12 to 12.25 and then 14 to 11.25 is the wrong way around in terms of date order. Yeah? Oh, yes.
Yeah. Sorry for being pedantic.
That's fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
But just on that point, Chair, I think it's really proper to keep it on the action log for now. We'll bring it back to the next committee where we've incorporated that legal advice into the policies then.
Okay, Liam. Yeah, that's good. So to be continued.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, strategic risks report. What's the last update? So the next meeting with the risk consultancy firms scheduled for the first week of April. A plan to formalise how the service will be utilised. Somebody else finalised. A revised way of managing and reporting risk. Wayne, have you got anything to add on this? Is your
Yes, that was from me, Chair. So I think there was one of the last risk report I brought to this committee and substantial gaps in it. The quality of updates were not really what we'd expect. I think there were some queries around prioritisation of some of the risks, in terms of what we're trying to work on as an organisation. So again, the monthly strategic risk assurance forums have really put a massive focus on risk. So in the short term, you'll see later on this agenda, there is a Q3 risk report.
Yes.
I thought that reflect a lot more of what the priorities are. They're a very much better report than the one previously. And then update there is around the risk consultancy. So it will be by the next meeting, I probably will have a more definitive timeline, but then we've got to look at this in terms of we have a certain amount of consultancy hours left. It's up to us really how we want to use them. But the risk report, hopefully you do see further on in this agenda, will be significantly of a higher standard than it was in the previous report.
Well, I'm sure we'll all be pleased to hear that, and thank you, Wayne, for the work that's gone on there and the coordination that you've done with the consultancy firm. So we will be discussing this later in the agenda, as you say, but this is still something to remain on our.
I think it is because what we
Absolutely.
intend to do is to brief commissioners and potentially new members on our new approach to this,
Yeah.
which will involve members being trained on that new approach as well, because part of it will involve the vote time methodology, which is new to the service, and it
Yeah.
will be new to members potentially as well. So,
Yes,
so yes, it will have to come back. It's just that was the update for now. So you had some idea of the time frame that we're working towards.
that's lovely. Thank you both. So to be continued then for this one. Thank you. And update on strategic risks. Well, as I said, we're picking this up now, aren't we? In the meeting?
Yes.
And there's a further paper going to Board of Commissioners in the papers being issued. today.
Next week.
Which is just the top slides, if you like.
Yes, yeah, okay, good. Operational training, leadership personal development academy funding.
Again, that's already been added to the agenda and the papers going out today.
Okay, thank you. And on the next page, station construction, update on New Inn and Abercanon. Lisa, do you have anything further on this from these reports, please?
No, sorry.
So I think you just wanted to know the estimated completion date for New Inn, which is quite a way off in the future, but it explains why in the update. And then obviously that the other site has now been handed over. So unless you had any further questions, I would suggest that action be closed.
Okay, do we need to keep the estimated completion date project on the burner though?
Defer to Liam.
Chief, sorry. I think this issue was picked up as part of the capital monitoring information members and commissioners will be receiving. So it's those sorts of timelines are included in our report.
Okay, because, you know, having run a major authority where capital projects have been part of what we've done, I'm always aware of overrunning, over budget, etc., etc. So I'm always very keen with any major capital project that we keep a very close eye on it because things can rapidly. Through unforeseen examples like the issues with, you know, the environment issues that we've had to deal with and so on and so forth, you know, one thing, I mean, hopefully we won't find a boat in the mud as we did when we built the theatre in Newport, a medieval boat. But, you know, nevertheless, that's an extreme example, but one that I can tell you, I've spent many a sleepless night over for many, many, many years because the costs just kept going up and up and up.
It's probably going to be a sofa and a shopping trolley.
Yeah, that's more like it. Yes, yes, but you know what I mean. I'm very aware of capital projects and how things can spiral.
I
Okay.
would agree with that, Jen. The costs never come down and they never finish quicker than you thought.
No, except if you're Edwina Hart, former member of the Assembly, who ran the project to build the Assembly with Richard Rogers, and it came in on time and on budget. Do you know Edwina Hart?
I don't know.
Right, she makes me look like Mickey Mouse.
Okay.
Okay, she was absolutely, I mean, it was quite an achievement, but she did it, you know, so there we are. She was brilliant at it. But yes, so it's on everyone's radar.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay. And strategic procurement board then.
So this is one that will fall to me, Chair, and I need to contact the other equivalents in the other places to pick that up. So I've been told I'm nominated as chair of this board that I didn't know had been established yet, but
Yeah.
I'm just getting the arrangements in place with the other fire services at the moment.
Okay, so you will continue to update us.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. And finally, performance indicators. So we wanted, Kirsty picked this up at the last meeting about understanding the discrepancy between the unitary authority areas. And Matt, you've given us this breakdown here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's more, some information as well, Chair. You'll notice in the dialogue below, it
Yeah.
talks about releases from dwellings.
Yes,
What we have seen, Chair, and which is accounting for a lot of that 51% increase, is a project that was run across the UK called Right Care, Right Person,
okay,
where the police have stopped attending mental health
yeah.
incidents involving. So we have now been told more upon gaining entry for WAST and the ambulance service.
Yeah.
We've seen that increase.
Yeah,
We're working with the Joint Emergency Services Group, and Mike is actually sitting on a group that is actually looking at how to address this
yeah,
and the challenges it's causing basically the fire and rescue services in Wales and the police forces.
yeah,
So
because
that
it's
will
moving
account
the
for-
problem on, isn't it? It's not resolving the problem.
It is, Jay, yes. So that is accounting for a large part of it as well. And what we have seen as well is obviously the weather will have an impact. Well, it's not just wildfire. People will be out more driving,
Yeah,
out in the countryside.
yes,
But what is positive for us to take away from there?
yeah,
What the two key large areas we do see a lot of RTCs
yeah,
and stuff such as your Monmouthshire and Newport.
yeah,
Those figures have actually stayed quite stable
okay,
as part of it. When you look at Newport, it's very difficult for us to address
yeah,
because it's got the M4 corridor
yes,
running straight through it. So when RTCs
Yeah.
are happening on there,
yeah,
it's actually sometimes individuals that are not from Newport or even from South Wales alone.
no.
So these
But
are
it's the
part,
main road up from,
It is.
they come in from the ferry, they come from West
so
Wales.
it's coming
they come
everywhere
from
across that
Ireland.
corridor.
Yeah,
I mean, so the work continues with our risk reduction teams, with
Yeah.
out in with the stuff with the police around the preventative work in schools, and we continue to do that. But a lot of that is mixed up within the gaining entry to dwellings around that large increase, which we hope to address. As you said, Jay, it's not about moving the problem as we're resolving it.
indeed, indeed. Any other comments on this point? Because this is very operational. Okay, good. Thank you very much, Matt. Right. Moving on. Report and decision. Okay, here's another bit, the revenue monitoring report. How much are we overspending then? And what do we need to do about it?
Thank you, Chair. I'll take this report. Okay, so the overspend for this year, 2.6 million. That's £630,000 increase on the report that we brought you in December. Some key areas there are contributing to this position. You've got a small increase on employees of 50,000, but that's a net position. So what we tried to do is separate that out and give you the bigger lumps and bumps that sort of are mitigating to that £50,000. The largest driver for this change sits in supplies and services and is a symptom of Microsoft licenses purchased by ICT and some systems there. And the narrative is on paragraph 4.5. So that covers it off. I don't envisage any more costs occurring this year, albeit these items are going to have an impact on the budget because there's only one place this is going to come from if we don't go back to local authorities for additional funding, and that is our reserve pool of usable reserves. So you'll notice on Appendix 3, page 33, that 2.642 million is intended to be funded from the change management reserve.
Yeah.
So we start the year with £17.5 million in usable reserves. We're looking at using 2.6 to supplement the overspend in revenue budget, and we're looking like we finish in the year with just a sub £15 million figure. Now, you know as well as I do, it's not unusual to use reserves. Usually we would base deployment of reserves on tactical elements that would pump prime service areas to give longer term efficiencies. That 2.6 million, some of that, half of it, is planned usage. So the stuff that we've brought in to make some change, there's some posts in there, as we discussed in detail before. But the remaining point of that is just overspend. And on the salaries front, a lot of this relates to the overtime and allowances budget, which has grown significantly, and the reasons are all plotted out there in the report. So I didn't want to read through it in any great detail, but I'm happy to take any questions.
So Lisa, tell me, have we ever gone back to local authorities after budget setting and said to them, in the light of the increased budget that you've received from Welsh Government, which is far greater than we anticipated, are you able to revisit? Have we ever done that?
So no, we haven't done that, and there's issues with just doing that. The issue is, if you've put a budget together with integrity and are confident about what your running costs for the organisation are, which is a requirement of the combination order, the funding mechanism that we've got. So if you've put together, so that requires us to put together what we think it takes the organisation to run for the year and to consult on it. Just because they've had more than we thought they were going to have, why would we have more ourselves? I guess that's the question there, isn't it? Because they will say, the obvious question there is, just because we've had more, why is it you think you need more? What did your spending plans not reflect what you needed?
Yeah, and I understand the combination orders, and I understand the tram lines in which we have to work. And you know, you and Liam are the finance experts on this, but I'm just wondering, you know, with this, because this is a significant overspend. Okay, so we're now down, you know, we're down from 17.5 to 14.9.
Yeah.
You know, we can't keep going like this. Other authorities in our area who have been working like this for a number of years, they didn't bite the bullet and cut. You know, I cut 51 million from Newport's budget. And you know, that bullet took a lot of biting. So some of our local authorities are in more difficult positions because they've been using up their reserves. I'm just wondering out loud, and this is probably a conversation for offline with you and Liam. You know, can we do it? Liam, any thoughts?
So I think, Chair, we can do it. I think that, you know, there is scope to do that legally, I suppose. I think what we're focusing on here is the position for 25-26. So I tend to agree with Lisa that we shouldn't go back to say, just because you've had more, give us some of that.
Yeah.
But if we are experiencing significant budget pressures as we move into 27-28, it appears that we are going to have to dip into our reserves further to fund that shortfall.
Yeah.
I think that's the time to have that discussion when we're looking ahead to 27-28.
Okay, bearing in mind that we asked, you know, we were very prudent, weren't we, Lisa, with that 2.99?
Yeah.
You know, we could have gone for 3.99, we could have gone for 4.5. You know, we were extremely prudent with all the mores and the noise that was coming from Welsh Government about the 2%. So, you know, we were trying to be fiscally, you know, responsible. But within that fiscal responsibility, everything's going up.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talk about, you know, the budget was set back in November, so the impact of some of those decisions won't take effect until 27-28. I'm talking not financial impact now, but operational impact potentially.
Yeah.
So absolutely, I think it's something that we should always keep under consideration every single year.
Yeah.
It's not something that we should be going to as a matter of course.
Yeah.
But there are huge geopolitical and economic changes potentially coming down the track.
Yes.
At the moment.
Yes.
We always need to consider what that means for our budget, our funders' budgets as well.
Well, if we can't do anything at the moment, you know, taking Lisa's advice and your advice, I would just like to put on record that you need, you know, once we hand over governance back to local authority colleagues, you should keep this really under review for next year's budget.
Absolutely.
Because, you know, we under-asked, didn't we, Lisa?
So from my point of view, given the proposals we went through, the scrutiny and assurance process we followed, we got what we asked for, which is at the time what we believed we needed. Because so as a finance professional, I wouldn't be in the habit of asking for something that I knew I couldn't manage within. But you know as well as I do the detailed proposals that ELT discussed and were placed in front of commissioners, and there was a comfortability with that information and the way that we could deliver it. That was all agreed. So of course there's a cognizance there has to be a cognizance there. It is what we said we wanted, we actually got. you know, and I think that there's a question here, isn't it, in terms of don't take your eye off the ball with the long-term position with budget setting, because we worried about annual settlements. You know, managing our annual settlements within the broad strategy of our local authority funders position, so maintains the current funding mechanism that we've got.
But it also begs the question that I've heard many times, that a 3-year funding settlement would be,
Yes.
you know, deal. But,
Yes.
but you know, I just want you to note it, that I really feel that when you're looking at budget setting afterwards with the new governance team, that you ask for, you know, like Oliver, ask for more. Because we've been very careful this year.
Yeah, absolutely mortgage. Yeah, I think all of the decisions, even going into this year's budget setting, ultimately some of the decisions taken will have an impact on our communities. So that's something that we all, that should be the driver.
Yes.
So going back to local authorities, if we ever need to,
Yes.
is that the impact on our communities outweighs the
Yes.
financial savings.
Plus also, and they must be reminded of this regularly, you know, we were brought in 2 years and a month ago, and, you know, very little, if any, priming was given for the huge changes this organisation has made in that time, in terms of training and development and culture and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So if we had been in the health authority, there would have been money thrown at us. That money hasn't been thrown at us. We have managed to make those significant changes within our budget setting. So, you know, we've done a lot with that, and there may be more to do in the future. Vidge.
Point on that, qualify question. So I think the point is that we were asked during the budget setting process by a number of local authorities about what our process towards efficiencies were. We didn't have it all topped and tailed at the time. I think we'll be in a much better position going forward to demonstrate that we are putting our own house in order, and therefore the budget, the increases that we're asking for are in the light of efficiencies that we're already drawing down. So that's something that we will be better placed for next year. I guess my point was on the papers. Okay, to go to
Yes,
on page 23, sorry, 24. This is the overtime budget for the project that we've had running. Yesterday was the people committee, and South Fire, in terms of the English and Welsh fire brigades, is possibly the worst fire brigade when it comes to sickness levels, if not in the bottom 3. We've had a project here that's run for quite a while, and the final comment on page 24, the first paragraph, is this appears to be an unsustainable model for shift cover. So we're going to have to look at what we're doing going forward. I know there are plans, but just that it's come to this meeting, we should note that is an issue there.
Yeah, so that note that says this appears to be an unsustainable model for shift cover means that model is going to have to be reviewed. Yeah.
And just on that point, the trial was initially planned until the 31st of March, so we're actively considering that review with them.
Okay. As we move quickly towards the end of the financial year, days to go. Okay, is there anything further on this? I think we've extrapolated it. We've showed our concern of the overspend and the money. We have assurance that that shift project is going to be reviewed. We looked at the supplies and services. Just a last comment from me on the ICT pressures and Microsoft contract charges. I mean, you know, every document I read about this place or engage with has issues about ICT and the way in which we need to modernize, revolutionize, in fact. So I'm aware that there is going to have to be investment there. So, you know, we've put this money into Microsoft 365 contract charges because we have to. But, you know, I would say we really need to speed up with what we're doing here, because you can't keep throwing good money out after bad. And we have to be very careful.
The ICT plan into your Department Board Commission papers. Unusually has an exempt appendix at the time, and that's because it includes a business case for the funding over
Right.
the first couple of years
Yeah,
of the plan. I think the plan has, is it 4 or 5 years in length? 4 years, I think, maybe.
Yeah.
But the first two have set out precisely
Yeah.
what needs to be spent and to ask commissioners to endorse that expenditure.
Yeah.
But it's
Yeah.
commercially sensitive, which is why it's new.
the way it's got to be part two is commercially sensitive. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and any local authority would understand that.
Yeah.
Okay, if there's nothing further, then we've interrogated the revenue and we need to agree it, yeah? So, agreed? Yep. Okay, capital monitoring. Please, Lisa, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Capital monitoring report is fairly brief. The key elements of this report are the Appendix 1 that gives overview for all the capital schemes for the year, the budget at the start of the year, actual spend and commitments so far, and the outturn, and whether that's an under or overspend position, what the slippage is. As you alluded to at the beginning, capital projects got a longer time horizon. They tend to spend more, span more than a 12-month basis, and this is why you've got this concept called slippage. So the projected outturn for this year is reduced by 1.5 million down to 6.5 million, or 6.6 million really. The key areas of change there are vehicles. There's a variety of contributing areas, but vehicles are one of the biggest areas. The reasons for the variousness are contained within the report. I just want to draw Commissioner's attention to page 45, where Appendix 1 is. You've got the overspend of 6.5. There's the projected spend, of 6.5 million. Then you've got the overspend of 1.5 million and quite a sizable slippage figure of 10 million. The overspend of 1.5 is broken down for commissioners to see how that's actually funded on page 41. So there's a gross overspend of 2 million. That is partly funded through grant funding and joint contributions, and also underspends contribute to that position, and it nets off to 280,000 is what we have to spend there. Appendix 2 has got some grant funded elements there that relate to national resilience, and they are presented in Appendix 1 as overspends because they are not included in the budget setting process, because they are not guaranteed or offered before the financial year commences. So at this stage, I'm happy to take any questions on the report.
Yeah, I mean, the most significant slippage again in terms of property is New Inn.
Yeah.
Overspend there, 135,000. That continues to be a problematic area for us, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But April 26, we said in the previous.
April 2027 is the current handover date for completion of New Inn. I think this is a project where if it could have gone wrong, it did go wrong. It's been the first capital scheme for South Wales where the issue of the forever chemicals and the PFAS items are factored largely in the planning process, and more specifically the SUDS application. So commissioners will know well that took 10 months to complete the planning application for building because of that reason. That's going to feature across the estates now going forward, and I think that's an important point for commissioners and officers to bear in mind in terms of we're going to have a CRMP come July. That is likely to have some impact on our estates, and this has the potential then to slow everything down when really we would like to speed everything up. So I think it's just worth noting that is going to be a permanent feature for us going forward.
Yeah, and proceed with caution with anything that will need to be done in the future. So I'm sure there's lots of learning from New Inn. that we can incorporate, but you know, we can't plan, we can't budget for, you know, the environmental issues that we had to face. But you know, it's not been, as Lisa says, it's not been a straightforward project for us. Let's hope that the outcome will be worth all problems.
Yeah.
And I'm sure for the crew that will be cited there. And again, for the area and the community that it serves. Anything further from anyone else on capital monitoring? No? Okay, thank you, Lisa, and thanks for keeping us up to date with the figures and with the narrative around it. So the capital monitoring report is agreed? Yep. Okay, and then the Treasury Management Strategy statement. I think it's Lisa again.
Yes, so you'd be pleased this is the last time you hear from me today. This is the third Treasury Management Strategy Commissioners will be approving since their time here. As we know, the Treasury Management Strategy is the framework document that officers will work within and for commissioners and their members to measure us against. It contains a variety of information. It draws together both capital and revenue elements, budgets within the service. So it's quite strategic from that point of view. In here, you'll find capital prudential indicators. Now, our Treasury activity is predicated on our capital investment plans. As we've discussed before, we don't get a share of the capital settlement for local authorities in Wales. So our capital investment is all based on borrowing, grant funding where we can get it, and also to a much smaller degree, capital receipts, which are ring fenced for capital reinvestment, can't be used for revenue activities. So, you know, the first indicator there is the capital investment plan. So if we've got solid long-term capital investment plans, the Treasury Management Strategy tends to fall out of that. Now, this is a difficult position for us to be in because it's difficult for us to project with any certainty how we're going to look beyond the 12-month period until we finish things like big pieces of work like the CRMP. So, you know, those things will become more meaningful to us as we travel through time. The second largest piece of this document is the minimum revenue provision. And as I just described, we fund capital investment through borrowing. Minimum revenue provision is the repayment of that borrowing and the impact of that on the revenue budget. So you know, when for every £1 million that we're going to invest in capital, it can range, but the average is a £200,000 impact on the revenue budget for interest on borrowing and the repayment of borrowing through MRRP. There's a borrowing strategy there about timing of when we would borrow and the maturity of our debt book. We've been quite fortunate in previous years where our net debt borrowing rate has been sub 4%. That is now altering because we are in need of borrowing. We postponed borrowing as long as we can, and now we're in need of borrowing. And of course, rates are not coming down quickly at all, with the current rate at 3.75. So when we undertook the majority of our borrowing, we were enjoying quite low rates. Current bank rate is 3.75, and that downward trajectory given to us by our Treasury advisors and the Bank of England, that is slowing down because, as Liam alluded to earlier, the Middle East is having an impact on inflation in the service and the local authority economy and the economy at wide. So, you know, interest rates are predicated on inflation. So if inflation is going to rise, interest rates are not going to come down anytime soon. So it could mean that the assumptions that are in this report will have to change in order to, you know, in terms of the borrowing impacts and the impacts on the revenue budget of that borrowing. So we've got some Treasury indicators and limits there. They look at the level of borrowing that we think we should need operationally and legally. And it also looks at affordability limits. So it looks at our capital financing charges as a ratio of our main revenue income stream. It's sitting around 6.5% at this moment in time, which is acceptable. I would say the limit I put in here is 10%. If our overall capital financing charges exceed or get to 10%, that's the point at which we need to relook at our capital plans and either slow things down, so it's a pacing issue, or reprioritise. So that's a key thing to look at. The investment strategy is a smaller part of our treasury activities. This is about managing risk for us more than anything else. It's about managing surplus cash and not having all our eggs in one basket, as it were. So we utilise the SLI model. Security first in terms of where we place our money, liquidity next, how fast we can get to our money, and yield last. So we are not making big bucks on our investments. It's about making sure that that risk is spread and we can get our money back from where we put it. We all know what happened with the Icelandic banks. And then at the end, then there's a couple of policies there and a delegated request to give powers to Liam as Director of Finance to make changes to policies and practices in the year as he sees fit to be able to manage the situations as they arise. As we know, the geopolitical politics of the Middle East having an impact with us now. That may affect who we want to place money with, how long we want to place it, and also the cost of borrowing. So that's it in a nutshell. Happy to take questions.
Thank you, Lisa. It's a long report. It's one that follows you know, the financial rules in which we operate. I haven't got nothing particularly stands out for me in terms of any issues. Everything looks very straightforward and you know, I's are dotted and T's are crossed. So thank you for that. I would just again, just an issue in terms of the geopolitical on page 84, approved countries for investments. Would we be looking, you know, with the AA investments of Abu Dhabi and Qatar now in the light of what's happening out there? You know, that may well change, but that's just something for us to be aware of. And the Bank of England rate of 3.75 yesterday, as announced, was predictable because obviously there are issues around inflation. Mitch, please.
Conservation really, taking that normally the treasury management strategies, sort of steady as she goes document.
Yeah.
Because we can roughly judge what we think is happening in the world with some minor variances. Here, obviously with the stuff that's going on in the Middle East and affecting right here in our pockets today is one thing, but also the wider implications aren't only taken to, which is that the CRMP. So we've got a number of factors that mean the treasury management strategy, which hitherto has always been steady ship, means that I'm subject to a number of variances, some of which are not out choosing, i.e. the Middle East, some of which will be out choosing, i.e. the CRMP. So we may need to consider these assumptions in a more tender light than we have taken it hard and fast.
Yes, thank you, Vic. I'll turn to you now, Liam, on that because, you know, your role in this now will be more substantial going forward. I wonder, do you have any comments or thoughts, observations on it?
So comments first off, I think from November through to the end of the financial year is a hugely busy time for the finance team. So alongside setting a budget, coming up with a treasury management strategy, revenue monitoring report, capital monitoring reports, it's one of the peak periods. So massive thanks first off to Lisa and the rest of the finance team for the work that's gone into this strategy and the other papers today. But we were under capacity ultimately before my arrival. So I fully endorse the strategy first off. As Lisa pointed out, this is an ever-changing situation. So I think the parameters set out within the strategy are correct. We may need to flex our sort of risk appetite within that as we move through the year and as things develop in the Middle East. So we talked about the countries within for investment within the strategy. in practice already at the moment, we're only lending to UK banks, but again, we might want to step even further away from that risk appetite as things progress. And yeah, as Vidge pointed out, with the CRMP coming out, our model may need to undertake may change. So we need to keep a watching brief on that as we move through the course of the year. We'll go back to commissioners or the fire authority, depending on the timing as we move forward.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments, please?
Just one minor change on the recommendations, final bullet point. Obviously, we now have a director of finance, not treasurer. So the director of finance to update strategies, policies as necessary.
Okay, yeah. So we've received and reviewed the reports. We approved the annual strategy. We approved of any amendments to the organisation of the clauses. We've given it budget consideration and approval. We've approved the division of responsibilities. We've received and we've reviewed regular monitoring reports, and we've acted on recommendations. And we've approved the selection of external service providers and agreed terms of appointment. So that's a lot agreed. So we decided we've agreed the overall report, Vidge? Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. So that ends the reports for decisions. We now move into our reports for information. National Fraud Initiative, Wayne, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And the next 4 agenda items are reports presented by Audit Wales, who have joined us today.
Oh, yes.
Timothy Button was
Good
online.
morning, Timothy. Croeso, welcome.
Well then, thanks.
With this report, I give a brief overview of what it is, and then any comments afterwards. So,
Yeah.
Agenda item number 9. It is a briefing note provided by Audit Wales and provides the authority with an update on the latest National Fraud Initiative 2024-2025 exercise, which is a biennial UK countrywide fraud exercise.
Yeah.
I've used a lot of data matching to try and detect and prevent fraud. And again, participants were submitted data in October 2024. Data included data on housing benefits, housing tenants, but for us particularly around creditor payments, payroll and pensions. I think it was interesting to note here, there's almost 440,000 data matches that were identified for all the Welsh participants. 740, which is only 0.2%, were found for fire and rescue services, and again, unless the fire and rescue services will give a proportion of that. And it mentions in the report how bodies are encouraged to take a risk-based approach to assessing the data matches. Again, data matches carry a different level of risk. So in terms of matching those and reviewing them, we'll be taking a risk-based approach in the house. And my awareness is the service of finance and it's the payroll teams that will be collaborating to try and review the data matches we've had, particularly those at high risk, working their way down. It's just for information for yourselves. For any questions, I'm hoping that.
Well, you know, just to say, I'm glad we've got a National Fraud Initiative. I'm glad we're participating in it, and I'm glad it's 0.2%. You know, so that's lots of glads. Anything from anyone? Timothy, I don't know if you want to speak at this point. You're very welcome.
Thanks. I mean, I don't think there's much to add to Wayne's summary. It's just for information. It does obviously set some local information for the FRA, which obviously is probably of more particular note. Just one thing I was going to mention is towards the end of the report, it talks about the further work that we're doing, which will be and we've begun that work, which will inform our report in next autumn, which is looking in summary at how the organisations deal with the data and what they do with it. So that may be, again, of interest to the committee later in the year.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I think, you know, data is an issue for us as an organisation. So we will be dealing with that and delving into that in much greater detail. But data is the key to everything these days, isn't it? You know, so we have to make sure that we are on the right track with that. Vidge.
Just a quick, I know we're 0.2%, which sounds like it's very low, but as a percentage pro rata, because we have very small amounts of transactions, unitary authorities have multiple transactions. Is that matching? Are we ahead of the group, or rather than looking at just the raw percentages?
I don't have the exact figure, but I think it's a really important point. Absolutely, because clearly that's a percentage of the total, and the total spend is much higher in local authorities and health, for example. And you'll see there's the majority of matches are in local government, the councils. So absolutely, yeah, I think whilst it's a small percentage, you'd expect it to be a small percentage because of the scale of the operations. So yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Right, okay, let's move on then to the next agenda item, certificate of authorities assessment performance. Wayne, please.
Yeah, so this one is again another quite straightforward agenda item. The Auditor General most certainly that they've audited South Wales Fire and Rescue Authority's assessment of its own performance in 24-25 in accordance with Section 17, the Local Government Wales Measure 2009 and their code of practice. So it refers to obviously the fact that the authority produces publishes an assessment, which in this case refers to the service's annual improvement plan, presented published on the 31st of October 2025. And again, it talks about performance. There are set criteria that need to be present in the plan to demonstrate that the service is doing what it says it's doing. It's looking at data and the fact that it's publishing that in terms of our own objectives. Are we doing the things we've actually set ourselves, and how do we know we're doing them? And this is a certificate to just confirm that has been reviewed by the Auditor General and has been signed off. So hopefully that's again, this tends to be an annual certificate for yourselves, and we tend to get this certified with very little. In fact, there's very little collaboration on this one. It's an independent audit, and the certificate comes in around about the same time every year. So hopefully it continues. We're
very glad that Adrian Compton, the Auditor General, has said that we have complied with Welsh Government statutory guidance sufficiently to discharge its duties. Yeah, we're very, very pleased about that. There we are. I don't know, Tim, if you've got anything that you need to add since you've been copied into this certificate?
I think Wayne sums it up very well. It's a compliance piece of work, and as Wayne said, it's to check, if you like, that you have complied with the specific requirements of the measure in publishing a review of your performance. So it's limited to that, and it is in that sense just fairly straightforward, I think.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay.
What about at this point, Chair, as well, in terms of compliance can often be a minimum standard. I think there are some papers further on in this around strategic key performance indicators, performance management framework. I think as an organisation, we're only improving significantly in this area.
Yeah.
Some steps we'll talk about further on in the meeting.
Yeah.
Well, again, compliance to me is essentially the bare minimum. I think it's significant, as you mentioned, DDAT strategies and interoperability of our data system. So I think I'm hoping we can give reassurance to yourselves and assurance that this area will only get stronger and stronger. So.
I'm pleased to hear that, Wayne. Thank you very much for that addition. Okay, in that case, let's move on then to point 11, setting of wellbeing objectives. Okay, Wayne again, please.
Yes, of course. So again, this was an audit undertaken by Wales, South Wales Fire and Rescue Authority have a duty to actively sustainable development of the Wellbeing Future Generations Act 2015 and set wellbeing objectives. The report itself, I think, did pick up quite a few recommendations. It did look at how this was done. I think what's key today for me is to give a bit of context. So page 115 of the packs, audit members are acknowledged in terms of the timing of this audit. We looked at obviously the planning process that was reviewed in terms of setting wellbeing objectives was during the service has been in special measures and went through significant changes. So again, for me, the planning team, again, for myself, we're focusing a lot more on independent company review recommendations, thematic review recommendations, of HMI CFRS causes of concern. So there probably wouldn't have been a place in the most recent planning environment to talk hugely long term. Obviously prioritising the immediacy of taking us out of special measures. So that's a bit of context for the report here. So I completely agree. There may not have been, certainly in the plan that was reviewed by audit, it's a passive talk of well-being in 25 years forward. Again, the focus has been quite close to us really in terms of turning the ship around with yourselves to try and get us out to special measures. And it also mentions there as well in terms of significant turnover and absences of key members of staff, which again is it's on page 115. I think I mentioned that because at the time of Audit, we lost some, and there was a list of interviewees, several were not available. So again, it may not have been the opportunity to go particularly rounded for this audit. Again, I did ask for it to be fully scheduled. Unfortunately, it wasn't possible at the time due to the audit cycle.
Yeah.
Well, what I will say is the audit did bring up some really useful recommendations for the team. So as a planning team, certainly as we are now moving into a new phase of planning and a new phase of being able to look further forward again, we come to the hopefully to the end of our intervention. So we've taken a lot of the recommendations on board, and again, they're very, very helpful. The way we plan. So the recommendations came in three areas. The first one is obviously that setting of well-being objectives and apply a sustainable development principle. And they talked about how we specifically look at the Act as opposed to having that feel of retrofitting what we do to the Act.
Yeah.
So planning with the Act at the forefront of what we do. So the team has
for the horse.
yes, exactly. I think there's a temptation, I think, to look at a lot of the work we do outside of our statutory obligations. They are in themselves well-being objectives in terms of how they protect our communities and how they make our communities better places to work. I think it's just the terminology. I think we come up with them as improvement objectives and occasionally retrofit them to the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, whereas actually we should look at them through a wellbeing lens first, and maybe then align them to our strategic theme. So we've definitely looked at the way we plan. We've written our strategic planning for this in-house document for a team. We've looked at how we can integrate the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act up front. So that's really useful. Talking about our involvement activity, and that's come up. Obviously, our last public consultation didn't get huge traction. There's a piece of work now with the head of comms and the ACF for preparation with CRMP consultations. We are going to look at how we can improve that involvement activity, which is one of the 5 ways we work within the Act. And obviously, the business planning sessions we had this year, we put a massive front-loaded focus on the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act. And actually, this year, instead of writing improvement objectives, we actually wrote wellbeing and improvement objectives. Some of them were very, very as part of the Act. So we need to be that retrofitting exercise. The second recommendation was around how we plan our resources. When you do have future plans, the audit rightly pointed out that actually a lot of asking for the funding and what you're doing is quite hard to align the two at the moment. And I think that's a piece of work I think the Director of Finance and myself to effectively look at that future planning of finance, but aligning it to our objectives. So, if the question was how do you can afford to do these individual objectives, so I wasn't able to provide anything at that level. I know we will. And the third one was around performance. I think I just touched on it in the previous agenda item. It talked about having a mechanism to present performance readily to yourselves, future rescue, fire rescue quality. And I do there's a number of a set of strategic key performance indicators. We have performance management framework, and I know one more thing I'm looking at the forward product, so bring new things in a more time manner. We cover that one as well. So yeah, I think it was a really useful audit to have, and I think it's given us a lot of food for thought. We definitely have looked at how we present, how we actually comply with Wellbeing of Future Generations Act.
Yeah. Well, I would thank you for that, and certainly Tim, with the recommendations, thank you for your external assessment and view in order to help us to improve. I would just put in at this point, and I don't want to sound like the party pooper, but as a politician, I have to be acutely aware of how different changes to administration. So this is very focused on the administration that's been running Wales for the past 27 years. It is, on all our radar that might well change in May. So it's just a point to make to Audit Wales and to ourselves that you may well be focused on this, Wayne, Tim, but all better off after May 7th. You're going to be looking at, if the polls are right, you could be looking at a very different focus of government. And you're going to have to change your game, and so will we. Okay, so just, you know, we don't have to go geopolitical. We can go local political. And Tim, your setup in Audit Wales is, you know, firmly set in governance terms of what my party of government has done in Wales. That could all go out the window. I mean, I know you're ruled by certain, you know, levers of governance and acts of parliament and so on and so forth. But what I'm saying is that these are fantastic suggestions for us based on your analysis and your audit. Wayne is clearly and has clearly taken that advice on board. But I just want to put in a cautionary note that all this could change. Right? Okay? And look out. We're in for a ride, because we will never have seen such a big change in the governance of Wales as we're going to see in May. I'm afraid, you know, I'd rather it didn't happen, but I'm a realist. Vij.
Just an observation point. On paragraph 21, page 1 page. So it talks there about the involvement with communities. And I know we've done things like just stick to things online. I guess it's about making sure that the engine that's in the consultation mechanism is properly tuned. Because I know we did a drop-in session, didn't we, in one of the shopping centres. There are multiple shopping centres through South Wales. If we did a drop-in session at all of them, we would have had a higher number of returns. Because what it does talk about is a lot of the returns that we're getting are from in-house from staff. And if we're trying to make sure that we are proportionate to the communities we're working with, then we need that community response. Now, historically, CRMP don't get overwhelming responses in terms of what in people's top 10 things they want to write back on. But we need to make sure that when we go out for that first one, we're not trying to develop our consultation engine. We need to make sure that it's good to go.
Yeah, a large part of that work, Commissioner, will be around, there are two key areas. I think one of them is a stakeholder mapping exercise. So we were talking to the head of communications around trying to use existing meetings and trying to integrate ourselves into groups that are already meeting and already exist, trying to get them and trying to make this relevant to them. And the second one, I think, is around a risk-based approach, really, in terms of the impact of what we're consulting on and how much resource we use then to ensure that we can get sufficient, in fact, substantial consultation where required. So there are two key areas there, but particularly in terms of, you mentioned the shopping centre, I think it's proportionate to the level of involvement and input we do need, or potentially based on the impact the changes will have. We'll then look at obviously the resourcing accordingly and target it there. So that piece of work is ongoing, and I think it will be brought to yourself potentially outside of it.
Yeah, and I was going to mention about the use of social media as well, but you always got to be careful of how results can be skewed, because once you get the victim elders replying on Facebook, you've lost it. Do you know what I mean? They all pile it. But there's a role for it.
Yeah, that's a blast from the past.
Yeah.
And if they're an equivalent.
Yeah, there's a huge society in Newport to victim elders society. They often used to comment about me. Yes.
I don't know if Tim's feeding.
Yes. Yeah. Tim, sorry, I didn't mean to miss you out there. Would you like to add something?
Yeah, it's really very quickly. I think that's obviously a summary of the report anyway. The report was a while ago, so it was a point in time. And as Wayne went through the recommendations, I think the thrust of the recommendation, particularly the final one around performance, was around the outcomes or the impacts of the actions to deliver the wellbeing objectives. So that was the particular focus of that. And just to add from a kind of technical point of view, this was a piece of work, a bit like the certification that we talked about previous item, which is a very specific piece of legislation that we have to do the work under. So that's the kernel for it in the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act.
Yes.
And I think the other final point, just to note, we did review the authority's response to our recommendations and were satisfied that due consideration was given. So that's just a technical point to make the committee aware of.
Yeah, no, we're pleased for that. Thank you, Tim. That's very helpful. Right. Okay, if there's nothing further on that, let's move on then, Wayne, to your next one. Oh, no, it's not you anymore. It's Mike. You're off the hook. So I thought
Thank you,
we
Chair.
thought we were going to ask you to do that as well. There you are.
You can do if you want.
Putting out future fires, metaphorically. There we are. Mike, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Okay, the paper sets out how we responded to Audit Wales review into our prevention work within South Wales Fire and Rescue Service. So the audit was carried out in March 25 and released in July. So if I go through some of the initial findings of the audit.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Point one, the authority does have a reasonable approach to identifying who is at risk for some important gaps to remain. So I think we need to acknowledge that we do have strong data sets. We have Acorn, Exeter, Mosaic, WIM, and travel time, etc. But again, it's making sure that we prioritize where we get that information from. So stations are using the directed list. There are gaps when factors such as health issues, hoarding, or changing in personal circumstances are not captured through data alone. So I think even looking at our killed and seriously injured, we recognise that partner agencies often touch or come across these individuals. So it's making sure that our information sharing is robust enough that we are given information that we then know about these individuals. So there is work to do in that area. I acknowledge that, and we have a partnership manager in place whose work it is to improve our links to some of these different sectors. So point two, the authority is working to prioritise high risk and more complex household, but its current choice may not help this. Again, we acknowledge the findings of the audit report, and we've done work since to improve and strengthen it in this area. So what we looked at, we used to have a 45 category. So where we'd receive referrals, it would be a blanket 45 days, regardless of risk. So now we have 4 risk categories, and those risk categories are very high, 16 days. The purpose of the 16 days, you have two working tours. So a watch works full on, full off. So they have 2 tours to make sure they get into those individuals. 24 days high risk, 36 days medium, 45 days low. So that is one area we've addressed. The other area is we often rely on referrals coming from partner agencies. The issues come when they use different performance metrics to identify whether they are high risk or medium. So it's making sure there's a consistent framework that our partner agencies are using, so we know what is actually high risk. So often we can find we get referrals which we assume are high risk when they are not. So it's making sure we work with those. So we've got a consistent modelling. Point 3, it acknowledges we've taken steps to improve what we are doing in regards to prevention, but there remains work in progress. We acknowledge that, but across Wales, what we have improved is our strategy and governance arrangements. We now have strategy delivery plans, and our governance is stronger than ever. But we still acknowledge that there is further work to do, and we are looking collectively across Wales. We are coming together quite regularly. We are looking at areas in which we can improve. And one of those areas which we acknowledge as a service is our performance monitoring. So again, through our performance monitoring, which has been implemented, we can then ensure that our performance matches what we say we are going to do. And that includes the results. Point 4, the authority needs better analysis. Again, we are looking to bring across all our different systems. It doesn't help where we're using different data systems. We want that one clear dashboard that ensures that there is assurance for the governance of the service, and we are then able to identify where there are trends that we can then react to. Point 5, fire casualties decrease, but the authority needs to be clear on the prevention activity that works, and that comes through quality assurance and regular reviews. So you need to look back on what is occurring so you can prevent similar activity occurring again. So again, that will come through our dashboard and updating risk modelling. So when you review what's gone on with our recent killed and seriously injured, where we regularly review what's occurred so we can identify those at-risk demographics. One of the examples recently, after the spate, the killed and seriously injured, we identified a new demographic, which is single male living alone, often in flats or bungalows. So it's by reviewing our information, we're then able to make an informed decision
Yes.
and reflect our scoring matrix going forward. So there are two recommendations, which I'm not going to go through, which is R1 and R2. There is some narrative at the back in Appendix 1, but I'm happy to answer any questions if you want anything clarified. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. You've gone through very specifically the points that were raised and our response to them. So I have nothing further at this point.
Right.
Rich?
So I think the first thing is this report is nearly a year old. So there's a lot has happened in the last year. I think just the triangulation with what we've had from HMI recently. We've got submissions here where they talk that 25% of referrals are not high risk, in fact have no risk factors. HMI's report will indicate, I think they've already met with you to say that there are 30% of the referrals that we're doing or home safety visits we're doing haven't got the risk factors. So there was still an issue about allocating risk, resource to risk, proportional. I think the numbers, this is obviously before the winter that we've just had, where we saw a significant spike in fatalities, a number of whom were not on our radar. And so that work, sort of highlighting of the fact that we need to get some work with these partner agencies, it's not fully embedded because we're still missing people, and we missed a load of people just recently. I think the other part as well that we need to do is that when it comes to the strategies, we've launched them up here, but the HMI's testing station says that they're not really fully familiar with what the strategies are, what they imply. So there's a comms piece to be done in terms of the strategies. And in addition to that, we're going to need to revisit all three strategies because they were written before the CRMP. We need to make sure there's alignment with the strategies. And then when we then communicate those to groups, they need to understand that that's the latest version of what we're doing. Always a pleasure to read your reports, Mike.
Thank you. Just to give you some reassurance. Yes, the report is a year old. I think we are starting to put forward some of the points. We acknowledge the points raised, which is the most important part of this. Performance-wise, yes, we need to do further work, and I think it's working with the commanders, particularly bring them in more with a performance analysis, so we can monitor what we're doing to make sure that we are achieving what we need to achieve. So yes, there is further work to do, and we will revisit the delivery plans.
Because that's when the changes will be made at that level, won't it? And
Yes.
then influence their teams and it's about feeding back as well, isn't it?
And just one point, because it does talk here on paragraph 27, so the last, for example, the authority is considering whether to stop providing carbon monoxide alarms during visits. We need to be clear why it's critical funding from our own resources. So we did agree to fund it, and then there was somebody who was safe for carbon monoxide alarms.
Yes,
Yeah, which sort of validates that sort of decision.
absolutely. And I think we've seen a spike in carbon monoxide alarm calls at the moment as well.
Oh, right,
Yes.
because it's
In terms of your point about strategies being understood better at station level, that part of the current cycle of Leadership Connect sessions, we're reinforcing that message and providing the links and strategies. And the idea being that the middle managers who come to those sessions should be disseminating that information down. So it is currently being covered in those. I know that because I've done one and I've got another one next week.
Yeah.
so I going back in the world that I used to be in, I used to have strategies you give to the social planners to give it, and then they just push it out to say, read that. That's not how to deploy and devolve strategies.
It's worth mentioning as well, a bit more, Chair, around the obviously managers picked up the communication part for the performance management element of it as well. So prior to that report coming in, there would have been no oversight of those figures. Whereas everything mentioned in that report now we are picking up on a quarterly basis in performance management framework. So risk factors, preventive things, those sorts of things. we'll be able to keep a keener eye on within the year rather than waiting to find out at the end.
Yeah, that's good. That should make you feel better, Tim, that we're on it. Okay, and doing a lot more. And will do a lot more.
Okay, Max,
Yes, Mark, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, commissioners, and thank you, Mike, for just positioning that paper and recommendations. Before my arrival into South Wales, I just thought it might be helpful just to give you some context into some of the work that obviously I'm looking at as the head of risk reduction. So those recommendations, Tim from Audit Wales, I absolutely recognise. So thank you for them. For me, that forms part of an assurance model. The 3 lines of defence that some of you might have heard about around that external auditing. So within 4 weeks of being in South Wales, I will be introducing oversight and monitoring meetings within the prevention and protection teams to have that oversight at that departmental level to deliver not only against the recommendations that we're talking to here, but also this cross cuts across the HMI recommendations across prevention and protection. So I'm discussing that with my teams at the moment, and that will start to play itself out over the coming months to feed into the strategic performance board that the Deputy Chief Fire Officer mentions. And I'll also be reviewing the data and structure of the teams to ensure that we are targeting our activity against the highest risk and how we get that data. So I just thought that might just give some helpful context to some of the internal governance arrangements, which are key to delivering our high risk activity, and then how me and Mike work together to push that information out in a transparent and easy to use way for our operational staff to be able to support our prevention staff who go out and do high risk audits as well. But I very much welcome any questions, and thank you for the warm welcome.
Yeah, because it's forced to him now.
Yeah.
You were just a post holder at the time.
Yeah.
Yes. Right. Extra pauses or but yeah, so but the joining up has obviously happened, the focus has happened, the additionality of the
HMI CFRS.
Yeah. HMCI. But that additionality with the Audit Wales stuff, really gives us an absolute firm foundation of where things need to be strengthened. So that's all very positive. Thank you. Okay, so let's move on to internal audit report then. Liam, please.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Before I run through the report, I thought it'd be worth giving commissioners an update on a meeting I had with Steve and his colleague Jonathan this morning.
Yeah.
So that was a sort of initial meeting where we introduced ourselves first and foremost, but to sort of work through tightening up on some how reports flow through the organisation, setting some collective standards and expectations of each other. And I thought that was a really positive meeting. Good. And hopefully commissioners will see the improvements in this area moving forward, but particularly around how we monitor our recommendations and how we give you assurance that they've been implemented in a timely way. So at the moment, there's a piece of work that I need to undertake with Wayne's support, but we've got a number of recommendations, some stretching back for several years. So we need to get into a process of almost putting those into buckets of recommendations that have been superseded and overtaken by other matters.
Yeah.
Recommendations that are truly overdue, recommendations that are to be completed, but there's a future target date.
Yeah.
And what I want to do is
sort them out, in other words.
Sort them out, absolutely, Chair. Yeah.
Plain language.
Yeah. So in times for the next meeting, that would form part of this report that I'm about to bring to you, which will focus on reports that have been undertaken, or audits that have been undertaken in the period, and then our recommendation monitoring going forward, to give you that level of assurance. That work will be completed shortly. Also, I'm not quite clear why this hasn't been on the agenda today. We're discussing with Steen this morning. There'll be a paper from Steen which will show progress against the annual internal audit plan. So that will be a standard item on the agenda going forward. Yeah. So just to move through this report then, which outlines the reports that have been taken during this period, of which there are 4. Yeah. So I'll run through them one by one. The first one is a compliance review of station visits. Yeah. And this focused on the arrangements for compliance with the organisation's financial procedures. And they went to 2 whole-time stations and 1 retained duty station. It received a reasonable assurance rating, so there are 4 assurance ratings: substantial, reasonable, limited, and no assurance.
Yes.
And you can see in the table the recommendations then, of which there were 2 medium risk and 4 low risk recommendations. Some of those recommendations have already been completed, and with the others on a really short time frame for implementation as well. The second one then similarly received a reasonable assurance, is a review of our strategic planning and control.
Yes.
And this focused on arrangement by which the board and senior management groups ensure that corporate plans remain achievable, particularly in terms of the economic situation that we're facing. Again, reasonable assurance, and there were 3 medium risk recommendations for those. Again, these have short target dates against them, and they're all on track to be completed by July. So at the next Finance and Audit Committee, I should be able to report that those have been completed.
Good.
The next 2 then I'll take together because they are similar. They're both HR or people services focused. So the first one is a review of our discipline procedures, and the second one is a review of our grievance procedures. They both received limited assurance, and for the discipline procedures there were 2 high risk recommendations, 10 medium risk, 2 low risk, and 3 operational. And then for grievance there were 8 medium risk recommendations and 1 low risk recommendations. Given the limited assurance and the number of recommendations, again, Alison and Lisa Schroll have put some really tight implementation dates on this. Most of these are due to be completed by the 1st of April. So again, speaking to Alison and Lisa, they are confident around moving these forward at pace now, given the assurance rating. So by the time of the next meeting, we should be able to demonstrate significant progress against each of these areas.
And the HR function has gone into a massive review and analysis, you know, from outside anyway, hasn't it? So, you know, as part of this, we've got that wider audit stuff going on. So, you know, hopefully we'll get to a better place with all that information and changes that may need to be implemented as a result of that.
Absolutely, Chair.
Which,
So it's an observation, nothing about the specific audit itself. It's just that when I chaired the pre-meet for this, Alison was unaware of the 2 reports that were being some discipline. So I think there's an issue about the governance of this, and it's also poorly right, but you know, she didn't know that these were landing in the committee, and then there's an expectation, there are recommendations in there that apply, making sure that we don't a bit siloed.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that, and that was a big part of the meeting that I had with Steen this morning.
Okay.
So, for example, we've agreed that the scoping meeting involve myself, the lead director, and the person who's going to be responsible for the field work. Closure meetings will be exactly the same. Final report will be shared with myself, the lead director, and the person responsible. If there's limited assurance, that will also be shared with the monitoring officer and the chief fire officer as well.
so we've got a thread of responsibilities. Yeah. So again, we're learning, aren't we? Hey, we're making progress. It may not have been ideal, as the point that Vidge raised, but you've got the answer, and that's what we're looking for.
Yes.
So please. Okay. Is there anything you'd like to add, Steen? You're very welcome to comment.
No, nothing further from us. Just to point out the grievance and the disciplinary reviews were on the agenda on the audit plan because of the cultural review.
Yeah.
So then that's why they're in there. We felt they would be a risk and they would be need to improve, and that's why we put them as part of the plan.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. Then performance management framework, back to you, Wayne.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. And this could be a relatively large agenda item because it does have 2 papers. First one is around the performance management framework. So there's a appendix 1, the draft with a framework. And then the second report then is the first report to commissioners around the performance indicator for the commissioners meeting on the 30th December 2025. To run through all the indicators with yourselves and its performance around those. If I start with appendix 1, there's a performance management framework that's been developed. It's been developed to improve the alignment of organizational objectives with operational performance. It's trying to promote accountability, support continuous improvement, and actually define some roles, responsibility, and commitments to performance. Something we probably have felt has been missing again, formalising our commitment to performance. So developed against the comprehensive performance management framework. So sections include, it talks about the strategic context we're operating, performance management approach, roles and responsibilities. It talks about performance, planning, monitoring and reporting cycle. Then again, it goes into key performance indicators and governance and accountability. So you may notice in there, we talk a lot more about the internal meeting structure now, and we're trying to come up with a mechanism of escalating issues and discussing them long before they get to yourselves in a timely manner. So we were trying to sync up obviously internal boards and committees. So by the time we do come here, they've gone through the internal rigor of performance management really, and going through not only what is happening, but what are we doing about it, levels of assurance, whether we do need to escalate anything to yourselves for further consideration. So appendix 1, I hope, is relatively self-explanatory, and we can hopefully see the approvals from that today. And like I said, it does focus on the internal meetings, but I think sometimes it's almost there. So everyone that silo working. So time issues you plan to yourselves, and they've given some relevant levels of ownership and accountability. There'll be no surprises. So that's appendix 1. That be approved. The report in appendix 2, however, is more where the detail comes in. So this is the first iteration of a performance monitoring report put together for yourselves as commissioners. Like I mentioned earlier, we agreed 84 strategic key performance indicators for the service, 49 of which we agreed will be brought to yourselves. And then there's an additional 35 that will form part of scrutiny meetings for the senior leadership team, so the executive leadership team and the heads of service. Then there'll be a set of key local performance indicators. So I'm trying to get departments and teams really looking at what makes those strategic indicators to drive that performance on the service. You'll notice in the report again, it's the first iteration of its type, and I think the main thing to mention here as well is there's a new driven that was undertaken before this report. So we do have a strategic performance management framework chaired by a deputy chief fire officer. The first meeting of that occurred on the 25th of February 2026, and it did have again the executive leadership team, heads of service, and we did invite HMI CFRS to oversee the first meeting as well. Again, I think one of the causes of concern, or certainly the area they've highlighted, is the absence of that performance management discussion and scrutiny at senior level. So I think we opened our doors to them to be able to see us doing it live. Initial feedback from them was very positive. I think they were content that the deputy chief fire officer was holding officers to account, and actually officers themselves were owning the directions of travels of the key performance indicators, and we're aligning the key performance indicators to plans that they were working on. So again, it did have a good culture. It was a good meeting. Again, it was the first one, and then this report again is the first one we'll have. So I'll go through it very briefly, and then obviously if there are any questions you have around any specific indicators or pages, then either I or my colleagues in the room can provide more detail on that one. So again, it's a so if you'll notice the key performance indicators, like I said before, there are 49 of them, but they are divided into our strategic themes. We have a strategic improvement plan. And this is again trying, as Wales mentioned earlier, around it's aligning what we're doing, and then those things move the meters we're looking at in the right direction. So it's aligning outcomes and outputs. The initial page to show how many of the indicators do fit under each of the strategic themes. And then I go into how these have been assessed. So we do have a good, could do better, a poor, and a monitored rating. Good is an indicator that's either performing better than last year or performing better than a projection that you have. Could do better is either worse than a projection, but within 5% of the projection, or again, it's remaining the same as the previous corresponding quarter reporting period. Poor again is got something, an indicator going in the wrong direction. So it's either failing the projection or it's performing worse than the corresponding year by more than 5%. And I think one that may raise questions are those that are monitored. And they're monitored because either they are outside the services control, or that we actually don't have projection or any previous year's data to look at. Again, that's something we are working on, but at the moment, again, we try to move out on this one quicker. We thought, well, actually, we'll get the numbers out of discretion now.
Yes.
And then as we embark on further work, certainly you have points in time. So some of the indicators you don't have previous years, they're almost things you monitor on an ongoing basis. So you don't really have a timestamp of the corresponding quarter last year. You just have the figure as it is now. So as we do continue to report this, you'll start drawing lines in the sand that we can look back. So again, the performance overview then on page 183 talks about how many of the 40 main indicators sit in the quadrants, and you have 12 of them are assessed to be performing well. 7 again are in the could be better. You have 12 of them are performing poorly, and 36.7% of them, so that's 18 of them, are currently monitored. And if I go into then theme by theme, you can see some key indicators. And what I've tried to do underneath the table really is to put some really key but strategic level nuggets that did come out of the scrutiny at the strategic performance management framework meeting. And again, we go through them by theme. So prevention, I talk here around the number of 4 and 5 safety checks quarter 3 not meeting the projection. So again, a lot higher than it has been the corresponding quarter of last year. It didn't meet the projection we'd set. But again, we did have reassurances at the meeting that the 21,500 target set for the year would be met. We looked then at risk factors. I think a question was asked around the table as well of that 45 days and the percentage of 100 referrals. And we did get assurances from the 1st of April onwards that the turnaround time for home fire safety checks at high risk would be more refined depending on the risk. So I think 45 is the longest you would wait at high risk, but I think there's an appetite in there to look at high and very high and very, very high and give them individual turnaround times which are shorter. And we looked at percentage of dwelling fire receiving a home check within 72 hours of the incident. And again, that was moving in the right direction. I can go through each of the individually if you'd like. And so again, protection. We looked at the number of high risk audits, and again, they were, I think point 3 was we did stop longest on page 186, the number of high risk audits delivered based on the risk-based inspection program. And again, what we were finding is that we were performing better than the corresponding quarter of last year, but we were significantly lower than the projection there. And I know my risk reduction colleagues have set monthly meetings, I think, to really ensure that that projection is met towards the end of the year. I think the big one there was around the AFAs, so the automatic fire alarms, to see a 46% change year on year, and that's based on the revision to the attendance and automatic fire alarms project that Mike led. And even though we put a 45% reduction projection in, it's even exceeded that. I know it's 46%, but it shows a significant efficiency saving there in terms of, again, it's 821 responses in a quarter, which is so much more time back in the calendars.
Which is excellent, but I have to note that the fire inspector keeps telling us, is that what he's called, the fire inspector? He keeps telling us that the figure's going to go back up, but I'm an optimist, and I think that, we're doing a really good job on this, but he did tell us that it was going to go up, didn't he?
I guess the point is we're one of those late party doing this. You know, sort of brigades. This was normal business for a lot of other organisations. So, you know, the thing with trend lines is you have to take the average through them because you can get peaks and troughs.
So, yeah, just be aware of that. Wayne, is there anything, you know, is there anything you need to draw our attention to?
Yes, I think there was
Yeah.
the main one from a response point of view. We looked at fire deaths and injuries on page 187, and this is probably only action from the group. So at least from Welsh Government and statutory indicators. The main action we had here was at the moment there are 7 indicators that statutory Welsh Government indicators. But we noticed that when we looked at all fire deaths and injuries, you'll notice that we had a reduction compared to last year in that area. However, when upon further inspection, that indicator itself talks about a combination of fire deaths and injuries. On further inspection, the number of fire deaths increased from 2 to 4, and obviously then we had a conversation with the committee meeting about another fatality we witnessed in January as well. So to see 5 fire fatalities was hugely concerning. At that point, our deputy chief fire officer commissioned a review into why that's happening and try and feed that into our prevention activity. So that was a major outcome from the meeting that was captured. Again, I don't have anything else particular off the page, but I can open to questions if you like that one.
I'll just make a point that for the guidance document, release date, 20th of March, Commission's approval sought, that we have had several substantial meetings, obviously prior to this one, so the commissioners have fed in quite substantially to this document. So I don't think there's an issue about our approval because we've seen iterations of this and made our alterations and made our suggestions. So I'm happy to approve this. Yeah.
Yeah, I've just got some comments.
Yes. Yep.
So yeah, I absolutely agree with what you said there. I think when you look at the Welsh Government indicators, it just shows how narrow things were beforehand.
Yeah.
And it's really good that we've got this. We've got lots of data. We didn't have a structured framework for putting it all together and assessing it. And I think as well, it's a thing in time. It's going to be subject to iteration. There are going to be things that will fall out of it, things that will drop into it. I think also as well, we can wait forever and a day to have all the IT and all the systems in place. Sometimes we just need to know roughly where we're at. So presenting the picture that we have, even if it's incomplete, it's still better than not having a picture with all the data. It's great to hear the framework being used at different levels. You know, as a way of managing performance. I'm sure that will be attached to performance appraisals, that individuals will have elements of these as part of their ongoing work. The one bit I was interested to hear about, this might be Mark's one, where we've got high risk, medium and low, and we go to very high risk or very, very high risk. You know, we might be talk about, you know, we've got based on 16 days, we've got the on-call shift but on a whole-time station, you've got, doesn't matter what shift's on, there's someone there, there's a shift on call. If you've got a very, very high risk, you don't want to be saying, actually, you've got 16 days to do this. If it's very, very high risk, must be able to draw immediate resource to it, one would think. So in terms of stratification of how we're going to approach that, we won't want to leave very, very high risk, up to 15 days.
Yeah, I think that's a balance, Commissioner, with obviously what Mike is talking about. There was an agreement for an all Wales basis,
Yes.
and obviously being mindful that the 2 other services are quite heavily with their on-call functionality. So
We have-
we may alter that.
But we have to be very careful that doesn't take us race to the bottom. And we've got whole time here, we need to exploit that rather than say it's going to be tough for 2 other brigades.
Yeah.
And then I've got one more point for you, Mike.
Let's bring Mark on.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. I can help with that with the work that I'm picking up now within my responsibilities. So I agree with you, and I suppose just to try and help with some clarity, once we have information as a fire service that we have high or very high risk in individuals, for me, we treat that like a fire call, and 15 days is too long. We need to mobilise our resources to get into that property because it's a known high risk information we're holding. So I'm working with the data team within our internal governance within risk reduction to support cleansing of that data and to bring that up visible within our prevention teams as well as on fire stations. And I will be working through how we mobilise our staff at pace for those high risk individuals we know about.
Very much.
Yes.
Right, so when it comes to response, we talked about the average crew response times. I gather we've got some response times out of the station of up to 2 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is, I'd say, in all my 30 years in the service, I think is unacceptable. You know, I mean, if I were to hit a stop clock now, 2 minutes, it's a long time from the bleepers going off to the. There might be something about recording when they're pressing, they're maybe halfway down the road or forgot to do it and all the rest of it. But there's a broad point there, isn't it, about how fast we get out?
Absolutely. I think we're going to look into those particular occurrences, whether it is just being able to get through control, whether it is doing an activity on station at that particular point, which is delay them. I think it's case by case basis.
Yeah.
This identifying a threshold which needs to be investigated.
Yeah. Some stations
But I
are
agree with
different because of the configuration of certain stations, but yeah, there is a thing about.
Sometimes it's drill and everything
Yeah.
else. It's just looking into them.
There's other stuff we can do as well.
I think as well, Commissioner, if I can come in on that point, what we're seeing here is response times overall. So the reality is in relation to disaggregating that into getting out the door, it's not being measured is the real answer at the moment. So the local performance indicators that we can start to put into this now is breaking down what that response time looks at. So everything from call handling, mobilisation, even getting out the doors, turning in from call. We now have a framework where we can start to measure that. And, you know, I'm a believer of the odds of what get measured gets done, basically. And I think we'll see a start improvement in that just by measuring it.
Good, because at the OJ fire conference, they talked about average response times getting longer and longer.
Mm.
Now, when it comes to sort of response times, say for example, they're doing pumps and pumping in the yard and they've got the ladders up. But the call comes into an RTC. You really need to take all that kit up before you go?
No.
Are you going to need a 13.5 ladder at an RTC? You can go because you can, you know, if you need a ladder, someone else is going to come with it.
I think it's that cultural shift we're taking our stations on, Commissioner, because up until probably last year, we never recorded any response times. So we had that metric added to BMIS, started recording that. We did it with our on call, you know, so we've always done it in relation to that, but not our whole time. And there's other little things we can do now to fall as part of the fire cover stuff as well.
That the cycle guide, the accumulation of marginal advantage. You know, you do a bit on the call handling,
Yeah.
a bit on response, a bit on the.
Dave Brailsford.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Overall.
Yeah.
I have no idea what you're talking
So
about.
who's the Sky team cyclist?
Cyclists.
You know, when
Michael
what's his name won all those
Yeah.
awards, and what they did was they looked at every single bit.
You talk about the drone.
Well, there you go. But what they did was they looked at the smoothness of the kit that they wore, keeping their hydration, nutrition, the shape of the helmet. They changed the shape of the crankshaft to get more weight
All
on
the little marginal gains.
It's every
Yeah.
last little bit, and that's if you look at an attendance time from the
Yeah.
moment the
Yeah.
call comes in to the moment they
Exactly
get there
right.
and close it down. There are chunks we can go.
Yeah.
To add some reassurance to the commissioners as well, a lot of this data is very readily available. I think
Yeah.
what was really powerful in the meeting we had on the 25th of February was that curiosity. And I think it's so that, as the Deputy Chief Fire Officer mentioned there, when you start asking these questions, obviously further questions come from it. And then
Yes.
obviously you start breaking down and zooming in. And I think we already took an action to disaggregate a lot of the marginal indicators, certainly for senior leadership team discussion, because again, the richness is in the layer underneath the layer. That.
Yeah.
So I think we've probably got some work to do. I think while we had what we thought was a large list of indicators, actually from a complete service-wide perspective, I think we only kept adding and adding to the list. I think some will fall off, but I think, yeah, certainly with it being the first meeting, a lot of information is readily available. But now people are asking the right questions. Once they're asking the right questions, it'll drive activity. So, yeah, I think the list will swell and grow for a while. And I think, like I said before, that would be things like having information, particularly response, making sure this set of indicators that we want to.
So the last one, which goes back to the thing why I want to have to think about what debriefs. Yeah, so yeah, it's not just an 8-pump partner. It could be a 2-pump RTC when the attendance time was long, and it could be a whole load of reasons. So that's why debriefs and reviews as a part of normal business are really important, rather than thresholds of you only need to do a 10-pump fire.
The new OAT team is identifying the incidents which require a debrief, regardless of the size or scale. It's what the learning that's available.
Yeah, because the thing like, I'm going on, the thing about like an RTC attendance when you're doing pumps and pumping, that takes someone to make a decision, because people think I can't go out without the fire engine fully stowed. But actually, you need to focus on you're there as a response to an emergency rather than administrative thing making all the kit up.
I agree with you 100%. And if you look at the delivery plan, if you look at the performance scorecard, it's all about response times. And that is from the call to the mobilising to attendance to make that standard. So that standard is there, which can then be reviewed in the performance meetings.
One of the things about attendance and response times, I've served in 3 brigades for this one. The approach to a response was different in each brigade. The fastest I think I saw was Nottinghamshire. I mean, when the hits fell down, they flew out the doors. Other places, they're a bit more like we need to know where we're going, we need to check what's on the sheet, we need to too much discussion. So it varies.
But you find that's similar to here.
Right. Good. Okay.
Okay, so again, we're improving in that area, yes?
Yeah.
And there are plans to improve even further, which is music to our ears. Okay, Wayne, thank you for the detailed discussion, and I'd just like to echo what Vij has said about, the monitoring aspects. Okay, let's just get stuff out there, okay, and we can backfill as we go on. But this is, substantial changes. A lot of work has gone into it. So thanks to you and your team, because we're moving the dial here, aren't we? Yeah. Okay. And let's move on to risk Q3 report then.
That's myself.
Yeah, I waited for you to jump in.
Oh, yeah, it's only a beginning of somebody else, but I'll take this one on.
Mia can do it. You haven't said much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yeah, this is the Q3 report of the strategic risk register. As I mentioned in the actions points at the start, it's in the food version of the register where we reviewed again the commentaries are richer. They're all completed. And I think the order of the risks certainly reflects the conversation had at the executive leadership and heads of service levels. I'll just go through the report. There's three key areas here. The first one again is that there are 35 risks on the strategic risk register. Of these, 19 are rated high and 16 are rated medium.
Yeah.
The report in Appendix 1 gives an overview of how that picture has changed quarter on quarter. So as we're noticing our strategic risk of assurance forum meetings as we're having them, we're noticing that the register is still in a really heavy state of flux, which is great. I think inevitably as the risk conversation grows louder and louder, we're taking a much more involved view of risk now. It's driving everything we do, and as you imagine, so the register again is going through that. It changes on a quarterly basis, but we are hoping that will start to stabilise. I mentioned as well the work with risk consultancy firm, and that's really been an enlightening piece of work.
Yes.
We're looking at risks and we're looking at the bow tie barrier risk-based management system. But the difficulty is we're looking at risks in a different context, looking at them from hazards, and then we're looking at barriers to the things that can affect those hazards occurring, and then ways of mitigating again the hazard from happening, and obviously then subsequently to the hazard happening, mitigating the impact and consequence of it. It takes a much more scientific barrier-based control. So it hopefully won't change too much of what we report from an in-house assurance perspective. Is going right down at the effectiveness of those barriers and having an empirical way of looking at is that actually what is actually stopping this happening versus what could go wrong. Again, how do you mitigate the impact of what's happening in terms of reputation and service delivery? So again, we're working with the risk consultants. We have made a decision to purchase some software to draw the bow ties in a way that's dynamic and intuitive. The next meeting we have with them is on the 1st of April. Again, we had a bit of a review of the project based on staffing from their end. Again, our lead consultant moved on, But again, we picked the project up in the meeting we had at the end of last month. We made some significant progress. On the first of it, when they come in, they've already drafted some bow ties based on the register we have now as a proof of concept. And it's up to us really as an organisation. They've got a number of consultancy hours left. And they're very open for us to look at how and when we can use those hours effectively to get the outcome. So hopefully in the next week I'll be able to tell you exactly where our project's end date will be and what you can expect to see at the end of it. But the team have really been going with this. Is, again, it doesn't hugely change the register as it is now, but it changes it significantly in terms of the conversation and how you manage it. I think the only third thing I will say, I think only because we mentioned today some of the geopolitical and economic landscapes that are very immediate. The conversation we had in the Strategic Risk Assurance Forum did review the register as a running register. So again, the register we have in House is dynamic. It could be amended on a monthly basis. So it's important to note that the list you have in front of you is a point in time of 3, which is again our standard reporting timeline. But the committee can be assured that the risk register is reviewed on a monthly basis. And there have already been some changes to the risk register that happened 2 days ago. But then if you want to have a conversation again in outside this meeting with the executive leadership team, they can take you through the significant changes. But I can open it report up to questions at that point.
Thank you, Wayne. Pidge.
So it's an observation and a question. So in the NHS trust all the risks are apportioned to each of the subcommittees. So say there was an operations committee, the ops risks will be there. The ops risk, there are quite a lot of risks here because this is double the number we've got in the NHS at the trust. And what happens is those risks are at the front of the meeting agenda. And so everyone's aware of what those risks are. And at the end of the meeting, there is the chair has to sum up to say, have any of the discussions in this meeting affected the scores in any of those risks? And then that's how that's reported back up to the main board, that there's now a variation in risk ops 3, because that's where you kick the tires, as opposed to the main meeting where it's a bit more of an overview. So that's one thing.
That's a really good point, actually, because this is by its very nature about looking documents and the scores in and out. So actually reviewing at each meeting whether the conversation leads to a regrade, that is a really good point. I'll feed that into the governance review work.
Okay, because quite often the risks stay the same. But at some point over the year, the risk will have moved, and it's where you capture what was the discussion that said we've improved in such and such and that's good. The other one is the control one. I just think this is overrated. We're talking about 4 or 5 vacancies, and this is the one that's more as a scoring higher than anything else that we've got. Cyber attack, fatigue, culture, on-call availability, all this in there. I mean, it's 20% or more higher. So I just think this is. I'm astonished that this is there at this level. And one of the things that's not in the mitigations is if the control did go over for us, there's a fallback control arrangement, isn't there? That's not mentioned here as a mitigation. So the assumption here is if the control falls over, the world comes to an end. If the control falls over, we go back to the fallback control. And we have an arrangement.
We do it to control, yes.
Yeah.
We do it to no prints, but it's limitation on the
I accept, but that's not here for mitigation.
Yes. The other thing as well, Commissioner, you are right, and it was raised this week during the meeting around the high scoring of that risk and what is mitigating that risk as well. There are 3 liquid courses being undertaken this year. One is underway right now. So, and the next is starting pretty much at the back end of June.
Yeah.
So that again has reduced that risk, but that was noted this week within the risk meeting around the reduction of that figure.
I'm amazed that it's the number one risk that this organisation sees that that's it.
No, I think that's an extremely opposite point, Pidge.
That won't, so just to give you a bit of a pre-warning, because papers are going out today, the Board of Commissioners next week, where it's like the top slice of this document, those comments will be taken on board, but may not be reflected in those papers today. Fine. So just to give you a bit of a pre-warning about
There is a bit of a sequencing issue, isn't there,
Yes.
right now? Because we're also looking at quarter 3 and things have moved on since then, which
Yeah.
we'll discuss with you in different settings.
Yeah.
But this is very much a quarter 3 look at risk.
Yeah.
We have progressed
Yeah,
discussion.
so, like I said before, this report thing is about,
Yeah.
what we need to do is make, risk register is a boring piece of document unless you use it in the live format.
But nevertheless, again, you know, a whole shed load of work has gone into this, way really clean. And, you know, this is in, again, a whole better state. So to be able, you know, as Richard just pinpointed about the joint fire control issue, you know, the information is in front of us now that we can pinpoint.
That's true.
Okay, that we can be critical of or ask questions of. Because it's got to be readable and it's got to be understandable, because, you know, when the governance changes, it'll be people who are not as familiar. I mean, I'm nowhere near as familiar with fire services as Virtue's, you know, former chief officer. So understands it. If this was talking about schools, I know what I was talking about. Do you know what I mean? So it's you've got to make it so that people can understand it and make judgments on what you're doing.
Yeah, and I think from the, I think the Strategic Risk Assurance Forum has breathed a lot of life back into this. The meeting we had on Wednesday was very dynamic. There was so many discussions. There was so many, it was a lot of voice, a lot of input. So again, it is a very dynamic document, and I think it refers back to how useful that register is now, because it is a point. It should drive what our priorities are, what we're working on. So again, the meeting we had on Wednesday was excellent, but it'll continue going forward.
Yes.
So that's a really good indicator that's coming out, that there's a dynamic discussion going on about points like this, because part of the HMI feedback is that certain meetings that they went to, there was scripted people. People were attending meetings, reading verbatim from the script, as opposed to engaging in a discussion which would perhaps elucidate, you know,
Or challenge.
some better outcomes. So I think that's a positive indicator.
That's a good journey. Yeah. Okay, is there anything further on this amendment, please? Okay, in that case, we move on to point 16. I don't have any business that I deem urgent. And any items to report back to the board of commissioners. 3.3. But the things that have been raised today will feed in to our meeting next week, but I don't have any specific items.
And Chair, there's no forward work plan, and that's because it's linked to this need to know where everything's going under the new structure. So obviously that's not on there.
Yeah.
Obviously audit and finance are the two big topics that are constantly scrutinised. So there's no doubt that those papers are being put in a new forward work plan.
Yes.
It's just that I don't know exactly what the structure is going to be and where it's all going to go. So please rest assured we have internal forward work plans. I've done a lot of work on that with Leah.
Yeah.
We've shared a rolling document with our governance review team
of
all the reports we suggest are reported and needed on an annual basis.
Yeah.
It's just a case of divvying that up in the new structure. So please don't worry about the lack of that.
I trust you completely, Amanda. And just on that, Tim, just to note that, you know, we are now in a period of transition with Welsh Government and with our role, and we are looking at handing back over to local authority members sometime this summer. But, you know, again, I's have to be dotted and T's have to be crossed. So this may or may not be the last finance and audit meeting you see me chair. Who knows? But it may well be. So just for your awareness that progress is now gaining ground. And if you could feed that back to your team, please, that the governance is about to change at some point. Okay, there we are. Okay, meeting closed. Well, perfect. You're allowed.
Thanks, all.
I don't want to on there.
12:30.
Thank you.
So Liam and I will join you in that meeting as well.
Yes.
Yeah.